loob, sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng abuela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, dunong at tulog. Lipad na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan.
Radyo Katipunan, 87.9 FM.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atin mista, sa loob, sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugod, todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong. Lipad na Blue Eagle, galing giting at tigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan.
Let us understand mental health and explore how we can take care of our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Welcome to your weekly slice of mental health tips and tidbits with Pat and B, here on MindEd.
Sa'yo sumisilong kapag ang puso ko'y pagod.
Hello! And we're live.
Hello. Okay. Nakamute pala ako kanina. Magsasalita na sana ako. Pero, sige lang. Hello!
Yay!
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.
What?
Yes, welcome to
Yes.
welcome to MindEd, your weekly slice of mental health tips and tidbits. My name is B. I am just a letter.
And my name is Pat. Hello.
Hello. And we are
Sorry.
in
If
sync.
you notice, I know, again, like, all the way, like we used to be. Dati kasi. So for context, dati, nung live pa yung show, like, live in person yung show, nagkakataon parati na magkapareho yung sinusuot namin.
Or the
Nakulay
color
at the very
scheme.
least.
Mhm.
Color scheme. Ngayon, nagbalik na ulit yun. So, hello. If you notice also, I'm wearing headphones because for the long I'm at that point, or I'm at that stage where my hair is not nice. And I have yet to cut my own hair because that's a thing in 2020. You cut your own hair.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wait, weren't
So,
you wearing...
nakatago siya.
Di ba parang hindi yung gamit mo the past few episodes?
Hindi.
Sure?
Hindi.
Really?
Check ko yung iba nating episodes. Sinecheck ko Oo.
Talaga ngayon mo i-check?
Oo. Nakikita
Okay.
ko ngayon eh.
Okay.
Sige, hindi siya naglo-load. Pero anyway, okay. Hi.
Hello.
So welcome to another episode of MindEd. Another unplanned episode of MindEd. Hindi naman.
Why are we
Hindi naman
confessing
siya-
a lot of things tonight?
I know, right? Hindi siya unplanned as if hindi namin pinag-isipan kung ano yung pag-uusapan namin. Pero it's more of like a free-flowing, spontaneous kind of thing rather than parang, oh my gosh, what are we talking about?
In
pero
other
sige.
words,
In other
mga
words,
surprises na naman.
what?
Oh my God, you're gonna put me on the spot again.
I will though.
Bakit ganon? Kasi pag may
Joke
surprise episodes, I'm always the lugi one kasi you have the handle on things eh. Tapos parang, na naman yung pambansang gilig
Ikaw next time yung mag-isip ng surprise episode.
ng surprise episode. But I don't like surprises.
Joke lang. Sige lang. Sige, before we start with, or before we figure out what, hindi man figure out, before we reveal what it is that we're talking about today, kamustahan muna tayo. So B, how has your week been?
It was intense the first part of the week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, work stuff, ganyan. Also, kasi
Okay.
kababalik natin. I mean, we came from the typhoon weekend.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And it's, I mean, hindi ko na i-explain or i-emphasize ko ano nangyari. So we all know about it.
Yeah.
Thankfully though, we super affected by it naman. Except for the signal. And then, yun, pero yun lang. Tsaka kuryente. Parang almost a day ata kami walang power and no network service.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're like forced to be off-screen talaga kasi syempre kailangan magtipid, kanyan,
Right.
ng kuryente at ng power and ng phone use just in case there's an emergency or something, ganyan. And then, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like super hyper, mega, over, intense. Dami superlatives. Yan, very intense yung mga emotions and situations or emotions brought about by situations.
Okay.
Like, so, well, puro work lang naman yan eh. But, the another good news naman is that well, not so much good news, more happy news. Naka-leave ako today and tomorrow.
Bakit? Ano meron today and tomorrow?
So, hey, I just want to rest.
Okay.
It's
Good.
just that.
Good.
Yeah. And then, I saw a good friend na 8 months kong hindi nakita or more than ganyan. Kasi katatapos lang ng PLE, Physician's Licensure Exam. So,
Right.
So, tapos ng board. So, yeah, nakakausap na siya. So, waiting game na lang kung ano, kung pasado. Hindi, kanyan. But yeah, it was parang nagkaroon ng catch up. So, it was a very light and chill and yan. And then tomorrow, advance na ako tomorrow. Meron kami project with Chesscom. So, yeah.
Okay. Will we find out more about that later? Will you tell us about more about that later on?
Yeah.
Sige.
And
Secret
I think
ba yan,
it's
or?
being promoted na naman. No, the posters have been already cascaded and published. Kailan ba? Last week yata or this week lang din. Ganyan. And we've been talking about it rin naman. And for those who are following Radyo Katipunan and the other shows of RK, nababanggit naman siya. So, it's not exactly a secret.
Sige.
So yeah, that was me. Pretty much uneventful. Same old. How about you? Boy,
Pero buti na lang wow. Buti na lang ligtas ka from or ligtas kayo from the storm, and the worst that happened was na nawalan kayo ng net. So our prayers go out to all of those and kuryente. Our prayers go out to all of those who were negatively affected by the storm. And if you guys are free or have any resources to share, there are many different relief operations going on, whether it's with this specific institution with the Ateneo or anywhere else namin. So just even a quick Google/Facebook search will do you some good.
Yeah.
A lot of our brothers and sisters in the different regions, not just one specific region, but in the different regions are in need. And so if you guys have time and resources to share, please feel free.
Mhm.
I was fortunate because during the storm week, the worst that happened, if anything, was that it was cold. But that's it. I think that's one of the fortunate things about living in a high rise is that power is pretty taken care of in terms of contingencies, and and the network connection is pretty strong in terms of like foundation and stuff. So okay siya. I was watching the news mostly though, and I was seeing all of the tragic things happening around. So that kind of affected me a little bit. By the way, okay, sorry. Just want to say hi. So hi Miss Jen, hi Kirk, hi Les. Kirk, hindi mo na abutan last time. Pinromote namin yung Worship Gen na sale nyo no,
Yes.
11-11. Oh, hindi mo lang alam. Pero
Recorded
gonna
naman,
post-
replay natin.
mamaya.
Okay, playback pala, Justin. Naka-playback pala. But hey, Miss Jen, hey,
Yeah.
Kirk. Hey, Les is here also.
Sige. So anyway, segueing now to Ay, sige. Looking forward, I have some stuff that I'm looking forward to. So for example, I have a talk with Ateneo de Davao University on tomorrow in the afternoon with senior high and university students talking about safety on campus and the negative effects of drugs and drug abuse. As if expert ako dyan, no? Pero hindi talaga. Pero meron naman ako alam. I'm also, I'll talk about this a little bit more later. There's Feast Conference happening tomorrow all the way up until Sunday. So, I'll talk about that more later. And then a few more projects end of year with some of the organizations that I've been helping out over the past year. So, excited about that too. Plus, another organization that I'm helping out also.
Yes.
Yours.
It's ours. Yes. I'm so excited for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sige, nintay ko na lang yan. Sige. So we're talking about, sige, a little bit more context. So, if you guys weren't around 2 weeks ago we had a Life Lessons with Strangers episode. And if I remember correctly, the stranger was named Joe March. Named after the character from Little Women.
Yeah.
And her life lesson for us was that your worth comes from within. I'm not sure if that's like a verbatim quote.
Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, it was something like that.
And, it was such a compelling and such a, influential or inspirational conversation. And, Joe March, if you're listening in, kasalanan mo to. Pero it set me off on this journey of sorts of discovery, and for the most part over the past 2 weeks as of today, over the past 2 weeks I've been trying to learn or research or even just introspect a lot more about what self-worth means and how one develops it. So for example, I read up on some literature on it, and I'm part of this association called the Association for Contextual and Behavioral Sciences. And it's an international association of psychologists and scientists. And I posted this question on the boards. I'll read it to you later.
Sure.
But just really thinking about what does it mean, or what does self-worth mean? Pero sige, before we even get into the definition of that question, I'm wondering, so si Justin has mentioned or has confessed, if ever, that he's kind of been going through the same thing. Like he's been thinking about that conversation a lot. But I'm curious, B, is that something that has kind of like stuck with you, or something that you've been thinking about?
It's not more of it's stuck that it's like something heavy clinging on to me. It's more it's just there as a mental note and as a reminder. So it's when I kumbaga parang when I am distracted with other things and then I feel I feel overwhelmed or something ganyan or anything that's not happy, I bounce back to that. Or that's one of the things that I bounce back to. And then I stay there. So parang it's more like that. But yeah, did I answer that question correctly?
Yes, of course.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Nawala ako eh. Okay, yeah. So
Hindi, okay lang. And so one of the things that stuck with me, or one of the points of our conversation last time that I think really stuck, was the whole question around, how do you develop self-worth in people who kasi for us, like for Joe March, for yourself, for myself, for Justin also, and for a lot of us also here on Radio Katipunan, we find our self-worth in our spirituality or in a relationship with God. We acknowledge that we are loved, we acknowledge that we were created with purpose, and we're able to ground ourselves in that. And in that sense, or in that way, it's easy for us to kind of connect with what it means to have self-worth. But again, one of the points that stuck with me is, what about people who don't? So this prompted me to ask this question on my association boards. Sabi ko, TLDR, in your own practices, what techniques or metaphors have you used to help develop or improve self-worth with your clients or your patients? So ang sabi kong context na sa kanila is, hello, I'm a psychotherapist in the Philippines, and I got my postgraduate training in Australia, blah, 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 blah. Over the years of working with clients, mostly older adolescents and young adults, I've realized that work on self-compassion has been incredibly helpful in relieving them of psychological suffering and connecting with valued living. I have some clients with whom I've hit a wall, however, ones with very poor or unhealthy self-worth. So, expanded context, Jan. And I'm not sure if I ever actually picked this up when we had that conversation 2 weeks ago. But I like to oversimplify processes. It's like an OC thing of mine, or well, yes, yes it is. And I thought, or when I discovered ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, it helped me kind of simplify the whole process of relief from psychological suffering. I thought that the answer to relieving human beings of their mental suffering or their psychological suffering is to get them, or to teach them how to make space for or accept that suffering exists in the first place. Because I thought that or I acknowledged or agreed that one of the reasons why people, or why suffering prolongs for people, is because they keep avoiding it. But not realizing that it's inevitable. And so I thought that the answer, like the simplest solution or the simplest answer, is to accept na suffering exists and suffering has a purpose. So I thought na yun muna. But then I found that one of the things that hinders people from making space for that is that they have no propensity, they have no capacity for self-love. Na it's hard for them to be kind to themselves. And so I went on this journey of teaching people, and I talked about it on the show, I think like a year and a half ago, that the world would be a much better place if we were able to love ourselves, or we would have more peace with ourselves if we were able to love ourselves better. And so I kept going on that, or I kept pushing for that. And then lately I've been hitting, like I've mentioned in my question, I've been hitting a wall because it's not enough to just love yourself. A lot of it is believing in yourself to have ano ba? It's not an entitlement thing, but to be worth loving in the first place. And so now that's kind of the conversation last show, last episode, kind of prompted that for me na parang, oh nga no, how do you even get to loving yourself if you don't believe yourself to be lovable or worth loving in the first place? So, yeah, so I'll pause there first. And I want to know if you have any insight into that. Like, is that a mutually exclusive thing na parang I can love myself, or it's easy to love myself without understanding or without believing or even knowing that I am worth loving in the first place?
Okay. Siguro before we go into that question na am I worth loving, I think the struggle of most, including myself, sometimes I have that too. When you say self-love, okay, it's a concept, right? It's a principle, it's a saying. It's something that we see on social media, something that we see on mental health boards and mental health pages and stuff. But what does it really mean to have or to propagate or to exercise self-love? It's more, I think, the how. Like in practical things. Na parang, okay, it's easy for people to say that parang, oh yes, I love myself. But how do you exactly love yourself?
Right.
Like, yun yan. I think it's one of the reasons na parang, or one of the factors, like, I love myself so I take care of myself. I love myself so whenever, like, katulad ngayon, I just felt that I needed to rest because I felt tired. So, I think the expression here na parang na-express ko yung sarili ko, sana yung love ko for myself is that I took a leave from work.
Yeah.
So, those are like the practical steps that you need to probably commit to when you say that you love yourself. And I guess it's also one of, I mean, the self-worth is also one of those how do you love yourself? Find yourself worthy to be loved. So isa yun din sa it's something spiritual also, like yung sa Senecal, Sister Bubbles is always talking about you being the beloved. And so parang yun so to get to that, I guess yun nga isa lang yung self-worth dun sa paano ba? Hindi ko ma-explain. Nagigets mo ba siya?
Kaya nagigets ko naman.
Okay. Pero, so yun yeah. So I guess self-worth is just one of the sub-principles that contributes to self-love. I think we can probably, I mean, you can probably simplify that more. But it's yeah, you can, kaya mo yan. Pero it's a principle kasi it's a concept.
Right.
It's very easy for people to say talaga na parang, oh, I have self-love, I have self-worth, ganyan. But when you're faced with that difficult situation, do you actually exercise loving yourself? I guess that's one of the, practical questions if you want to exercise it every day or in their day-to-day like living or practices.
Yeah. By the way, guys, listeners, or eventual listeners, if you're not listening live, this is an evolving discussion. So if you have any insights, if you have any like thoughts, please feel free to share them with us in the comments. We will read them, live, if you're able to comment on live. But if it's not live, then we will just check back. But anyway, regardless, please feel free to contribute. So I've added context to my question. I told them na, I've tried helping people develop diffusion skills. So we've talked about diffusion on the show, and diffusion is about taking a step back and relating better to your thoughts. And harsh self-criticism is a thought process. So diffusion helps with that. Or beliefs around whether or not they deserve to be loved. But it doesn't work. Parang the one who taught me ACT has written that one of the key building blocks of self-compassion is self-directed kindness, and compounded by validation of painful experiences. I acknowledge that this experience is a painful experience and that it is valid, or the pain that I feel about it is valid. But a barrier to this is that they don't even believe that they deserve kindness in the first place. I've tried also, like, from a pragmatic or a practicality angle, asking them whether or not holding on to a belief that you don't deserve to be loved works or doesn't work in the pursuit of a more fulfilling or meaningful life. But one of the answers I've encountered this is that, and there are people who are like this. So, if you know anybody who is, that sounds like this, people who say that life is simpler or easier to live when I choose not to love myself. Maybe because they've gotten used to making mistakes, or getting used to getting admonished for making mistakes, and therefore have diminished self-esteem or self-worth. So some of my own clients naman are convinced that although the people around them have value regardless of their mistakes, that same thinking doesn't apply to them. And like I've mentioned, so I said this also in the question, when I think about my own self-worth, my default reasoning is based on my spirituality and religion. I am created for a purpose and I exist because I am loved. But again, I also mentioned this 2 weeks ago during our episode, that I acknowledge that this isn't everybody's cup of tea. And it's a continual struggle to find a way to develop self-worth in individuals without having to delve into spirituality. Now, you were saying something along the lines of how self-love or loving yourself isn't a definition, but rather an action. And therefore, one of the people who responded to my question actually said something like that. So, babasahin ko yung sinabi niya.
Okay.
Sige, credit where credit is due. His name is John Powell. He's American. So, sabi niya, this is an interesting question. When I think self in acceptance and commitment therapy, I think selfing. It's not a noun or not something you possess. Self-worth is therefore a cluster of behaviors hierarchically informed by self-worth. So in other words, what does someone with self-worth do? So people often wait for something like self-worth to come along before they start doing meaningful things in their lives. And people who lack a self-worthing repertoire aren't likely to easily absorb an intellectual conversation about self-worth. So you can hammer in some metaphors, but the nails will shortly pop up out of the foundation again. So instead, what I would consider is how can self-worth be developed experientially in therapy. So when clients talk about personal experience, says their resilience, their struggles, do you listen openly? Do you show interest? These reinforce actions associated with someone with self-worth. And because, so parang kumbaga, when you treat somebody as if they are of worth, that hammers in that concept that parang, oh, this person is listening to me. And therefore, I'm worth listening to. So something like that. Or, ano pa ba? Someone with self-worth would likely talk about themselves and their ups and downs, and they're likely focused on developing passions and helping others. And when you hear them talk about doing something meaningful in the presence of thoughts like, I have no self-worth, this is worth reinforcing. I would say doing meaningful things with your life are self-worthing. I also tell clients that self-kindness and self-compassion are choices. They never need to develop self-compassion or self-kindness because it's a choice that you can make, whether you have. Parang it's a conscious choice that you can make. It's not something that you need to deserve. It's just something that you can do. However, if they don't, we both can likely see how this will affect their lives. And no matter what, even if they choose not to develop self-compassion for themselves, I tell them clearly that I will choose every day to act compassionately and kindly to them, because these are the values that I've chosen in relation to or in relating with them. So in a gist or in a matter of speaking, ang sinasabi niya, it's not necessarily like a concept that you can define, but rather something that you do or instill in a person. Sorry, that's badly put, but that's more or less it. What do you think?
Hindi ko na-gets yung instill in a person.
Now, it's something that you instill in a person when you treat that person
Okay.
as if they are of worth.
Okay. But that is if you're in therapy. Kasi,
Or could be when you know, when you relate to your friends or you relate to the
Mm.
people around you.
but what if alisin natin yung other people? Ikaw
Yun
lang.
nga eh. Oo. So yun yung mahirap.
Mm.
And so this prompted, so another thing that I did also was I did some research, or I did some, some very light reading
Mm.
ish. So there's actually been something called the self-worth
Mhm.
theory of psychology.
Mhm.
Pero sige, let's go through technical definitions
Okay.
first. So self-worth and self-value are two related terms that are often used interchangeably. Having a sense of self-worth means that you value yourself, and
Mhm.
having a sense of self-value means that you are worthy. So the differences between the two are minimal enough that both terms can be used to describe the same general concept.
Mhm.
Self-worth, as defined by Merriam-Webster, is a feeling that you are a good person who deserves to be treated with respect. And on the other hand, self-value, this is a definition by a researcher, is more behavioral than emotional, more about how you act towards what you value, including yourself, than how you feel about yourself compared to others. So it's a behavior, or it's about how you behave towards the things that are important to you.
Mhm.
So parang self-valuing. So treating yourself as if you have value. So yun yung definition ng self-value.
Mm.
Another set of interchangeable terms are self-worth and self-esteem. So similarly, there's not a huge difference between self-worth and self-esteem in terms of technical definition, especially for those who are not professionals in the field of psychology. In fact, the first definition of self-worth on the Merriam-Webster Dictionary website is simply self-esteem. And the World Book Dictionary defines self-esteem as thinking well of oneself or self-respect, while self-worth is defined as a favorable estimate or opinion of oneself. So clearly, many of these terms are used to talk about the same ideas, but
Yeah.
for those deeply immersed in these concepts, there's a slight difference. So another
Yeah.
author says, self-esteem is what we think and feel and believe about ourselves. Self-worth is recognizing that I am greater than all of these things. It is a deep knowing that I am of value, that I am lovable, necessary to this life, and of incomprehensible worth. But again, does not answer the question. So another set of interchangeable terms is self-worth and self-confidence. Self-confidence, though, is not an overall evaluation of yourself, but a feeling of confidence and competence in more specific areas. For example, you could have a high amount of self-worth but low self-confidence when it comes to extreme sports, like or certain subjects in school, or your ability to speak a new language.
Mhm.
But it's not necessary to have a high sense of self-confidence in every area of your life either. So there are naturally some things that you will simply not be very good at, and other areas in which you will excel. But the important thing is to have self-confidence in the activities in your life that matter to you, and a high sense of self-worth overall. Okay, still does not answer the question. So in psychology, the concept of self-worth may be a less popular research topic than self-esteem or self-confidence because it's less measurable. But that doesn't mean it's less important. So self-worth is at the core of our very selves. Our thoughts, our feelings, and behaviors are intimately tied into how we view our worthiness and value as human beings. So self-worth theory, this exists or has existed since 1976. So the self-worth theory posits that an individual's main priority in life is to find self-acceptance. And that self-acceptance is often found through achievement, as in performance. So again, this is from the 70s. So in turn, achievement is often found through competition with others. So it's other-oriented pa rin.
Yes, external pa rin.
Yeah. So thus the logical conclusion is that competing with others can help us feel like we have impressive achievements under our belt, which then makes us feel proud of ourselves and enhances our acceptance of ourselves. So I don't buy into this because, like, I don't think my worth is based on, or our worths, or our worthiness is based on how we compare towards one another. Diba?
Yeah.
So, but again, this is an old theory, and it's based on like empirical research that they were able to gather in their time.
Mhm.
So according to the self-worth theory, self-worth is determined mostly by our self-evaluated abilities and our performance in one or more activities that we ourselves deem valuable. Now that
Mm.
makes sense. That's a pretty common conception of self-worth. No.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
However, people commonly use other yardsticks to measure their self-worth. So the top five factors that people use to measure and compare their own self-worth to the worth of others are: number one, appearance. So
Mhm.
whether measured by the number on the scale, the size of clothing worn, or the kind of attention received by others.
Mhm.
Net worth, so that means how much money you make, how many material possessions you own, whatever financial assets you have, or all of these things. Number three, who you know or your social circle. So some people
Mhm.
judge their own value and the value of others by their status, like social status,
Mhm.
and what important influential people they know.
Mhm.
Number four, what they do or their career. So we
Mhm.
often judge others by what they do. For example, a stockbroker is often considered more successful and valuable than a janitor or a teacher. Number one, I don't subscribe to that. Okay, this is just based on the research. And then number five, lastly, which I mentioned already, is what you achieve. So as noted earlier, we frequently use achievements to determine someone's worth, whether it's our own worth or someone else's,
Mhm.
such as success in their business or scores on the SATs or placement in a marathon or other athletic challenges.
Mhm.
Um, there's an author who's trying to correct misunderstandings and misperceptions about self-worth. So sabi niya, your to-do list is not a determinant of self-worth because achieving goals is great and it feels wonderful to cross off things to your to-do list,
Mhm.
but it doesn't have a direct relationship with your worth as a human being. Your job doesn't matter. What matters is what you do and that you do it well and that it fulfills you. So
Mhm.
it's not it's more oriented
Wait, nawala ka. Okay. I think we lost him. Or ako ba yung nawala?
your age,
Yeah, okay.
you aren't too young or too
Hmm. Yeah, Patrick. Okay, I think we have to pause first and digest. Hang on, hang on. Let's see. Right, okay. Sige. Justin, sorry. I'm asking you live now. Sino ba napuputol? I can hear it. Okay. Okay, so the screen is paused. Okay. Sige. Ayan, are you back? Hello? Mute.
what happened.
I don't know.
Na-disconnect. Ako yung na-disconnect, no? So, sige.
Uh-huh.
Okay. My bad.
Yeah.
Um,
It's okay.
So this was more in line with what Joe March was saying last time. You're the only one who determines your self-worth. If you believe you are worthy and valuable, then you are worthy and valuable. Even if you don't believe you are worthy and valuable, guess what? You are still worthy and valuable. But
Mhm.
again, still does not answer the question of why. Why or how?
Mm.
And
Were you able
so
to
at this
conclude it on your own?
sort of.
Sige.
And so I have therefore created or parang found maybe three different perspectives.
Mm.
I'll start with the most controversial one.
Sure.
Okay, and maybe that can be like a bulk of our discussion. So the most controversial one comes from another person in my association.
Mm.
His name is Ham. And he says that, so I'm speaking as if from his perspective. So sabi niya, I am convinced that both self-worth and entitlement or deservingness are not only intellectual dead ends, but also functionally pernicious, meaning that it's destructive or harmful.
Okay.
So let me begin with self-worth. I can agree that one can have many kinds of worths, I have worth as a parent, I have worth as a friend, as a psychologist, as an associate or an association member, and on and on. That is, I can set a criterion of performance and then judge my performance against that criterion. So typically that judgment will be made along some kind of scale, either more or less, but without specifying the unit of more or less. So like it's an order, so an ordinal type of scale. Equal distance between each unit of measurement, so an interval type of scale, or equal interval with a true zero or a ratio. However, the most fundamental or the most basic kind of scaling is nominal. Either it is or that it isn't. So what would be the proper scale for a self? I suggest that it is nominal. Either you are or you are not. The rest of the scales, like, how much are you, doesn't really work. And it is the insistence on using that type of measurement that is the source of difficulty. So, think about it this way. A self cannot be accurately evaluated beyond whether it is or it isn't. Trying to relate or trying to rate yourselves beyond whether you exist, trying to rate selves or self beyond whether it exists or does not is simply a mistake. One of the ways that you can kind of sense that, like have a sense of self is for the very fact that you are alive. Just being alive is not the sort of thing to attach worthiness. One is alive or one is not. Your body may be more or less strong or handsome. Your mind may be more or less sharp. But when it comes to aliveness, either you are alive or you are not. You are not any more alive than anybody else, and you are not any less alive than anybody else. And this has nothing to do with deservingness or entitlement. One does not deserve to be alive, nor do they deserve to die. So one is not entitled to be alive any more than any other living being is deserving of or entitled to life. One either lives or one doesn't. Is life worthy enough to live or to exist? Well, you might as well ask, is orange big? Because language is simply being misused, and misusing language can create big emotional and other kinds of headaches. Further, love can be treated as a gift rather than an obligation. Are you worthy of love? Well, you could give it to yourself whether you are worthy or not. Because yun nga yung definition ng gift, diba? It's given whether it's merited or not. Like I mentioned in the context, is that some people find it easier not to love themselves than to love themselves. That's true. But in the same vein, it's easier not to make and not to eat breakfast. But how does that actually work out? There's a famous ACT researcher, and she says, it works in the moment, but not in my life. Ease is a potential criterion on which to judge, but it's only good for works in the moment. But it doesn't work for in my life. So the guy who's saying this says that the trouble with the philosophy of eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, is tomorrow comes and we're not dead. All we are left with is a hangover and a big mess. So his saying is rather, if you plan to be around tomorrow, best act like it today, whether it's easy or not. So none of us know if we'll be around tomorrow, but most of us have a plan, because without a plan, life is like a pinball machine. It's reactive. Or it's like a sailboat without a rudder. So if easier was working as a criterion for somebody to whether to love themselves or not, or if the principle of living was whatever is easy, then they wouldn't be in therapy in the first place. So it's not as if that's something that they held on to either. What he would usually say to people that he's encountered who are sort of like the same as my context is he'd say, you could give up on being such an elitist and be more democratic. You treat everyone else well, but not yourself. What makes you such a special case? Why not treat yourself the same way you treat others and join the rest of humanity? And if the answer is, I don't deserve it, then how about making a gift of loving yourself rather than an obligation. So that's the perspective, is that it doesn't matter what you're worth. You are capable of love, and you can make the decision to give yourself love, whether you deserve it or not. Because, and it goes back to the whole pragmatism of it, na parang, it works, parang your life is more fulfilling, or your life works better if you love yourself rather than if you don't. And it doesn't matter whether you believe that you're of value or otherwise. Okay, I'll stop there.
Yeah, kasi I think din kasi na parang when well, given all of those definitions that you read, no, I think ano pa rin siya. So okay, first, it's heavily based on externals pa din.
Right. It's
So,
other-oriented.
Other-oriented. And then the second one is really more parang it's all internal dialogue. To the point na baka malunod ka naman as a person.
Right.
Kakaisip mo, am I worthy or not? And then you spiral into why, and then you spiral into how, and then you spiral into who. Yung sa nawalan ka na ng sense of self.
Yeah.
Ayan. And then I guess dun papasok yung confusion. No, not really confusion, but it's more being at a loss of why am I even asking myself this question.
Yeah.
Yun. So that's one. And then second na nag-trigger lang sa mind ko is that what pushes people to think about their self-worth or self-love? I mean, is it a conscious thing for everybody, or should it be a conscious thing for everybody?
I think a lot of where the trigger for self-love comes from is more of like a survival or like a self-preservation thing. Na parang there's this innate desire in us to live or to survive for as long as we can. And part of surviving or living for as long as we can is, well, in a way, being kind to yourself. Diba? Parang you wouldn't eat, or hindi ko alam, parang it mostly stems from like basic survival instincts, diba? Like, but then parang we've lost touch with the capacity to be kind to ourselves because we've come into this place of thinking that it's selfish. And we've gotten so averse to the notions of selfishness.
So, hindi ko na-guess kung ano ka umabot sa selfish.
Parang we've come to this point where we feel like loving yourself is too selfish. I think for the most part, because I don't know, for many different people, or many people have misinterpreted certain teachings in either religion or in culture that you should always think about everybody else. And we've become so addicted to thinking about everybody else, being considerate of everybody else. We've forgotten to love ourselves. That's just a perspective. I don't say that. I don't mean that that's how everybody thinks. But
okay.
What do you think?
I think it's something that existing already within us. Like at the back of our heads, meron tayong to choose others or myself, or is it okay? Let's put it in practical reasons. Nakapila ka sa grocery, and then nagmamadali ka rin. Pero there's, let's say, an old lady, let's say, behind you. Like, pauunahin mo ba siya? Or, kasi mamadali ka rin. So, mauuna ka ba or siya? Yan, medyo madali yan. But, nag-isip ako ng isang example na talagang Let's put a pin on that muna. But in concept, when you're forced into that situation, like there's a situation na parang A, you would choose to go to this direction na mas magbe-benefit yung other person kaysa sa sayo, or would you go to the other direction na mas magbe-benefit ka? Kumbaga parang pag magbe-benefit kayo parehas, pero sino yung mas magbe-benefit? It's a concept.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's we're all faced with that kind of I think circumstances din every day. But I guess it's I think the point that I was going for is that ngayon lang siguro na pag-uusapan.
Yeah.
Kasi I think there are more. This is the main reason why we started this show, for example, to begin with, is for these types of conversations to have space.
Yeah.
And for it to be discussed, diba? So by putting that in context, if you think about it, really think about it in that concept of I'm choosing this not because I hate that person or not because I value myself over that person. It's because I choose to love myself now by choosing this path. But it doesn't mean that I condemn the other person or condemn the other path. Yeah, so parang I guess it's more like that. When you think about it, it's not really seeing another, or ito na naman, other oriented na naman tayo.
Yeah.
But how would you? I think kaya rin kayo kasi you can, or it's manifested only when it's side by side with another. Like black is more seen when against white, or white is more seen against black. That's why mas napag-uusapan, mas lumilitaw, mas nagma-manifest. But it doesn't mean that it's not there if it's just on its own.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess the point that I wanted to bring forward to then is, what if wala yung other oriented? How then can you practice self-worth, and how then can you practice self-love? Then it's a question.
Okay. So this brings in the next couple of perspectives that I've come across that might speak into what it means to have a healthy sense of self-worth. That has nothing to do with another. And so I've used this metaphor several times with several people. And this is also actually, if you think about it, this is another way of interpreting what it is that Hank, the previous perspective has shared. And it's that, so that the metaphor is that, so let's say, for example, ikaw, B, if I give you $100, like $100 bill, like a fresh one right now, what would you do with it? Like, it's just for you. What would you do with it?
Okay. Is that a rhetorical question?
No, like seriously, like for you, what would you do with $100? What would you buy?
No, I'm just gonna keep it there muna. I'm not gonna touch it. Yeah.
Sige. Okay. Let's pretend that you were wanting to spend it on something, and that you took out, this fresh, crispy $100 bill, and you're on your way to the store. Sabihin natin, bawal mag-plug. Hindi. Sabihin natin, papunta ka ng worship gen. Bibili ka ng merch. Yun na lang, para friend of the show. So, on your way to the worship gen store, hinangin yung $100 mo.
Okay.
Tapos, well, hindi naman malakas na hangin, pero nahangin enough that it slipped out of your fingers and it landed on the floor. Or on the street. Na lang. You still pick it up?
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Sige. As you lean to pick it up, it gets swept away again by the wind, and it falls into a puddle. It gets a little wet, a little damp.
Mm-hmm.
You still pick it up.
Yes.
When as you approach daming mangyari. When as you approach the bill, this nice puppy kind of comes, stray a little bit, pero cute pa rin. But comes, sniffs it, licks it a bit, kind of maybe like nips at it a bit or scratches it a bit so that like a small corner of it gets torn.
Mm-hmm.
Still pick it up.
Yeah.
Okay. May dumaan na homeless person. Sorry May dumaan na homeless person. Nakita niya may papel sa puddle. Pero hindi niya alam, he's never seen $100 in his life, so he just thinks it's a piece of paper. Picks it up, sneezes on it, crumples it up, and throws it on the floor again. Would you still pick it up?
With caution, yes.
With caution, yes, but would you still pick it up?
I think so, yeah. I still will.
What do we learn here? That no matter what happens to this $100 bill,
it still has
it's still $100. And so how that relates back to us is that it still kind of connects with the whole fact that we're alive. But I would like to add that we're alive because someone, even just one person, thought it was worth keeping us around. But if you compound that with any ordinary person in that it's not just one person. It's a whole bunch of people who have loved you and have kept you alive. Diba? Like for example, think about it this way. The only reason that you were born, or even before you were born, you were created because of love. If you don't want to think about the love of God, then you think about the love between your parents. They, at a certain point, even if your parents are separated, well, of course yours aren't, but even if, anybody listening, if your parents were separated, at a certain point, they loved each other enough to think, let's do the act of love. Sorry, children's show. And make a baby. Or whether it was intentional or not, the act was still, in some form, love. And then they found out that, they were going to have a baby. And they had a decision, or, they had the choice to, keep it alive, sustain it, or not. But because of love, they said, let's keep going. Every single, and I know this because I have a wife who is a mother. Every single human being alive was birthed in pain by a mother. Unless test tube baby. How often do you come upon a test tube baby though? But regardless, birthed in pain by a mother. But the mother endured that pain to bring you into this world. And that pain was endured because of love. And for the longest time, your life was sustained on this planet. You can think of it like because of obligation, but at the truth of it all, like there really is no obligation to sustain a life as much as any of our lives have been sustained, but sustained nonetheless because of love. Now, let's think about the whole achievement thing. When you were born and when you were a baby, and I look at my baby now, or my baby's not in view right now, but I think about my experience with my baby, and my baby does nothing. All she does is take a crap, cry, go to sleep, is cute. And yet I love this child with my every fiber of my being. And she's achieved nothing. In fact, like if you think about it in a different way, in a different perspective, it's inconvenient. And yet I love her. And I think that doesn't change.
Mhm.
You know, throughout our entire lives, parang, does it, I mean, think of, ikaw, in your perspective, does age, like as you age, as your age grows in number, does that diminish the amount of love that you are
Mm.
either have been given, whether you were whether you believed you were deserving or not,
Mm.
or you did, di ba hindi?
Mm.
So parang the whole like cash metaphor is that everybody's rating or everybody's
Mm.
value, your value as a person is 10 out of 10, but so is everybody else's. And
Mhm.
therefore, the way you love your neighbor should
Mhm.
be, or should be the same way that you love yourself.
Mhm.
And the way that you love yourself should also be the way that you love your neighbor.
Yeah, I agree. Well, dialing back to the whole achievements thing, no. I think we gotta stop, you know, defining people by what they do in life.
Yeah.
Kasi parang I think then nagsistem out din yung okay, sense of self-worth na parang okay, let's say I have this job.
Yeah.
And then I'm very successful at it.
Yeah.
And so I
Of course.
see my worth again,
Yeah.
hypothetically speaking. And then I lose the job. And then mawawala ba yung self-worth mo doon? Parang hindi naman, di ba? So if you stop defining other people or defining yourself, but what you do or what's your job, yan, I think we then can let go, and I think we then can, you know, love ourselves more or see ourselves more worthy of such value and such love. And
Yeah. So parang like what Hank said, like you have different worths, I guess, or different worths, like a worth as a parent, as a colleague, but you also have worth, the pinaka basic, I think, and inalienable worth is that of a human being. And your definition or your value as a human being is not, parang at the end of it all, it's the same as everybody else's. You are alive. And you losing your job, if ever, not you particularly, but in general, like you losing your job doesn't make you any less human. You making a mistake doesn't make you any, actually, in fact, you making a mistake makes you more human.
Yeah.
If that's at all possible.
I guess it is.
Yeah. So there's I guess that's what we kind of come back to, is that value or that worth as a human being, and not as any of your roles, but rather just how alive you are. And whatever it is that whichever perspective you choose to subscribe to, whether it is that nobody has any entitlement or any deserving or any worth, and therefore everybody is of worth, or that you are born because of God's love and God's sacrifice, or that you are loved and you have, and you know, whatever, it all boils down to the same exact thing. Everybody is worth the same, whether it's none at all or it's extremely valuable. It's all the same. And therefore, if you love yourself, love everybody else, and if you love everybody else, you love yourself too.
Amen to that.
Lalim ng pinag-uusapan natin.
Bakit nga kasi, no? I guess okay lang din yung ano. Ang ganda ng art card natin, by the way. Thank you, Justin, for that. I heart me, I love me. And I think if everybody would think that way, and you know in your mind and in your heart that everybody thinks that way, na meron kang like a badge na I love me, then it would lessen the, well, some of us, diba? It would lessen the guilt of, sabi mo nga, of being selfish, or that feeling of selfishness, if we remember that everybody also values themselves. So, yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Gawa na tayo ng t-shirt.
Circling back now to, I guess, the whole simplifying the OC-ness of mind is that when you know that you have value, or that you are of value as a human being, and that value is that you are alive, and you connect that with it works better for you, or it makes you more alive, or it makes living more fulfilling to be kind to yourself or to be compassionate to yourself, then you do so. And therefore, help that compassion that's directed towards yourself, or that kindness towards yourself, helps you cope with or buffer yourself against the harsh realities of the world around you, and therefore achieve acceptance or relief or peace of mind or resilience or blah 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 blah. So yeah, I've kind of circled now. Wow, yay.
Yay, okay.
Is this the end of my 2-week journey? Oh my god.
No. Ngayon mo palang nare-realize eh. So now it's time to exercise it more mindfully. Or may assignment ka bigla. Right? Let's
How do
go.
you shove this down the throats of people? No. You are a human being.
Sabi ko sa'yo, may paggawa tayo ng t-shirt. Hi, Kirk. Sabi ko na hi, Kirk. Speaking of Kirk. Wait,
Ano?
nag-message si Kirk.
Ano sabi?
Screenshot natin. I think it's here. Wait. Ah, yeah, it's here.
Ito.
Nice
topic. Methinks it will help you feel that you're worth it if someone you immensely respect, look up to, makes you feel that you are worth it. Of course, we hope to get this from people, but ultimately, hirap kasi tao lang sila and imperfect and selfish. It thus points to the need of our lovableness come from somewhere external, from someone perfect and not selfish, who is God. Yes, Kurt. Galing mo talaga. Dapat nag-guest ka today no? Sana nandito ka.
Guess nga natin si Kirk next time, no? Hi,
Sige
Kirk. Bakit dati dinisip yon, Patrick? Paki nga.
Hindi ko alam siya kasi. Yeah,
okay.
Kasalanan pa talaga.
But yeah, picking up from Kirk, I think ito yung he asked the question na how do we show it onto people? How do we make them know that they are loved and whatnot? I guess, sinabi our families, our co-workers, our colleagues, our neighbors, strangers in the show life.
Yep.
At it's okay to choose yourself. Yourself, things like that. And regardless if you are spiritual or not, religious or not, if you have achieved or not. And I go people's favorite word.
Yeah. Amen. Amen to you.
Amen to you, Kirk. And amen to you, Patrick. Thanks for
losing us guys though. I think our connections are pretty intermittent. So with that said, maybe we will close right now. So this has been MindEd, your weekly slice of mental health tips and tidbits. My name is Pat.
And I am V. I am just a letter.
Okay, we'll see you again next time.
And we'll see you next week.
Yes. Also, by the way, FeastCon. Plugging lang pala. FeastCon is happening over the next 3 days. So go to www.feastconference.com. I have an on-demand session there. Check my post. See you.
Yay.
Bye, guys.
Ito na yung exit queue. Are we? Okay, let's do left, right, left.
Let us understand mental health and explore how we can take care of our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. Welcome to your weekly slice of mental health tips and tidbits with Pat and B, here on MindEd.
Sa'yo